What does it feel like to chase a dream that slips further away with every passing year? For Emily, that question was her life. At 35, she stood in the nursery she'd painted pale blue 7 years ago, her fingers tracing the edge of a crib that had never held a child. The room smelled of hope and dust, a silent monument to her and her husband Mark's relentless journey to become parents. 7 years of doctor's visits, fertility treatments, and whispered prayers had left them bruised but unbroken until the day her sister, Claire, asked her to sit down. Emily and Mark met in college, their love blooming over late-night coffee and shared dreams of a big family. They married young, imagining a house filled with laughter and tiny footsteps. But as months turned to years, the absence of those footsteps grew louder. Tests revealed Emily's low egg count, a biological hurdle that felt like a personal betrayal. Mark, ever steady, held her through every negative test, every miscarriage, every moment she doubted herself. "We'll get there," he'd say, his voice a lifeline. They tried everything: IVF, acupuncture, diets, even adoption applications, but the universe seemed to conspire against them. The nursery became Emily's sanctuary in her torment. She'd sit in the rocking chair, clutching a stuffed bunny, imagining the weight of a child in her arms. Friends stopped inviting them to baby showers. Family tiptoed around the topic. Yet Emily clung to hope, her heart a fragile flame that refused to die. She and Mark had saved every penny for one last round of IVF, their final shot. The procedure was scheduled for next month, and Emily allowed herself to dream again, picturing a future where the crib wasn't empty. Then came Claire's call. Her younger sister, always the free spirit, had been distant lately, consumed by her own life. When she asked Emily to meet at their childhood home, Emily sensed urgency in her voice. She arrived to find Claire in the old living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, dust motes dancing like ghosts of their past. Claire's face was pale, her hands fidgeting. Sit down," she said, her voice trembling. Emily's stomach twisted. She knew that Tony it was the sound of something breaking. Claire took a breath, her eyes avoiding Emily's. "I don't know how to say this," she began, "but I'm pregnant." The words hit Emily like a physical blow, stealing her breath. Claire, who'd never wanted kids, who'd called motherhood a trap, was pregnant. Emily forced a smile, her heart splintering. "That's amazing," she managed, though her voice cracked. She wanted to be happy for her sister, but the unfairness of it burned. Why Claire, who didn't even want this, when Emily had poured her soul into it? But Claire wasn't done. She reached for Emily's hand, her grip tight. "There's more. It's not just that I'm pregnant. It's Mark's." The world stopped. Emily's mind refused to process the words. Mark, her Mark, the man who'd held her through every loss, who'd promised they'd face this together. "What?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "It was one night, Em. A mistake. We were drunk, and it just happened. I didn't know how to tell you. I'm so sorry." Emily pulled her hand away, her body trembling. The room spun, the walls of her childhood home closing in. She saw flashes of Mark's recent late nights, his distracted smiles, the way he'd avoided her eyes when she talked about the next IVF round. How long had he been carrying this secret? How long had he let her dream while knowing he'd betrayed her? She stumbled out of the house, ignoring Claire's pleas. The drive home was a blur, her tears staining the steering wheel. When she confronted Mark, he didn't deny it. He stood in their kitchen, head bowed, and admitted everything: a fleeting moment of weakness during a fight last year, when Emily had been consumed by grief after another failed treatment. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice hollow. "I love you, Em. I still want us to have a family." Emily laughed, a bitter sound that scared her. A family? With my sister's baby? She felt like she was drowning, the life she'd built unraveling thread by thread. She walked to the nursery, slamming the door, and sank to the floor. The stuffed bunny stared at her from the crib, its glass eyes mocking her shattered dreams. Days turned to weeks, and Emily withdrew. She canceled the IVF appointment, unable to face it. Mark moved to the guest room, his apologies a constant hum she tuned out. Claire called daily, leaving voicemails Emily deleted unheard. The betrayal was a wound that refused to heal, each memory of her sister and husband tainted by their secret. Then came the twisted, unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Sarah, a social worker they'd met during their adoption process. Years ago, Emily and Mark had applied to adopt, but the process stalled when their agency closed. Sarah had moved to a new agency and found their file. There's a little girl, the letter read, 4 years old, in need of a home. I thought of you immediately. Emily's heart stuttered. She hadn't thought of adoption in years, the pain of rejection too raw. But Sarah's words sparked something, a flicker of the hope she'd thought was gone. She met Sarah alone, not ready to face Mark. The little girl, Lily, had bright eyes and a shy smile. She'd been in foster care since her mother passed, her father unknown. When Lily reached for Emily's hand during their meeting, something inside Emily cracked open. The decision wasn't easy. Emily wrestled with her anger, her grief, her fear that she'd never trust Mark again. But Lily's face stayed with her, a beacon in the darkness. She confronted Claire one last time, not to forgive, but to understand. Claire, now visibly pregnant, broke down, confessing her guilt and her plan to raise the child alone. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, but I want you to be happy. Emily didn't forgive not yet, but she chose to move forward. She and Mark began counseling, not to erase the past, but to see if they could rebuild. They met Lily again, together this time, and when she laughed at Mark's silly faces, Emily saw a glimpse of the man she'd loved. The adoption process moved quickly, and soon Lily's footsteps filled the house, her toys scattering across the nursery floor. The pain didn't vanish. Emily still woke some nights, haunted by Claire's words, by the family she'd lost. But Lily's small hand in hers grounded her. She wasn't the mother she'd imagined, and her family wasn't the one she'd planned. Yet, as she tucked Lily into bed, reading her favorite story, Emily felt a quiet strength. She'd been destroyed, yes, but she was rebuilding brick by painful brick. In the end, Emily learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing to hold on, even when the world tried to tear you apart. Lily wasn't the baby she dreamed of for 7 years, but she was hers. And that was enough.